Did you have some time to think and reflect about our discussion last Tuesday, this Tuesday? It seems like it's been so many things going on. Um, I hope it was helpful to have this session, and I'm very grateful to our teacher to have this opportunity in the middle of the course before jumping into more difficult things to reflect. Um, so today we are going to be in the class 5 in the middle of a course, and we are middle way. So just to let you know that next Tuesday will be our last class before a little break, and we recontinue end of March so that we can all engage in the study of the retreat taught by Geshe Michael. So please, let's take a few moments and remind ourselves why we're here, and try to keep this intention throughout a day. And maybe this intention will help us to be present today, whatever we do. And let's think about our motivation. Thank you kindly. Please turn on your cameras. Please welcome our teacher, Venerable Gyelse, today, who will be teaching class 5, what Buddha really meant. We're still trying to figure out what did he really mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Let's wait just a couple of more minutes. It's just on the hour now. People seem to wait till the last minute to join class. So let's just wait quietly and invite others to join us so that they too can understand what the Buddha really meant. It's allergy season here in Sedona. So excuse me if I have to blow my nose or sneeze. Okay. Well, of course, we're going to start with imagining a pure world, imagining a world that serves all beings, a world that is at peace, where there's enough, right, for everyone, for every being, whether they be humans or otherwise. So close your eyes and imagine what that world would look like for you. Who would be in it? What would the landscape look like? What would your discussions be like? What would you look like? And then let's offer this beautiful, amazing, perfect world to every being in the world. Sashi Puki Jukshing Meto Chum Rirab Lingji Nende Gempadi Sange Shingdu Mikte Ulwargi Jokun Namdak Shingla Chuparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami. A little low for me. Sange Chudam Soki Chuknama Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sunam Ki Jola Penchir Sange Juparsho Sange Chudam Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Chunyen Gipe Sunam Ki Jola Penchir Sange Juparsho. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of listening to this class and all the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Okay. So again, welcome everybody. I think hopefully we gave enough time for everybody to come, but I would like to encourage everyone not to wait till the last minute to sign into class, to join us so we can get started right at the beginning, because you know how long these classes go, right? And how much information there is. And it's just respectful to your fellow students as well, to all of us start class on time. And thank you, Natasha, again for the introduction and reminders today. So as Natasha said, here we are in the middle, class 5, and we're going to be talking about the outcome of the exchange. So the mind-only school, I'm going to just jump right in. I've got my hats here today. The mind-only school uses a sutra in which the Buddha explains the intention of all of his other sutras. And this is the mind-only school's main sutra. And that's basically what we've studied so far. All of the questions up by the Bodhisattva and the answers by Lord Buddha, right? And then the decisions that are made after that exchange before Lord Buddha and the Bodhisattva, Dundam Nyandak Pak. And all of that comes from this famous sutra. So remember, they're interested in the 3 turnings of the wheel. Why are they interested in the 3 turnings of the wheel? Because that's an easy way to divide everything into what Lord Buddha taught literally and figuratively. So they're super interested in what those 3 turnings of the wheel were and what he spoke about and whether we're to take it on face value or not. So all those things are wrapped up in that. So here we have this sutra in which the Buddha explains the intention of all the other sutras. And it's the main mind-only sutra. And it all got started with the Bodhisattva Yandak Pak asking his question. What was his question? During the first turning of the wheel, you said everything exists by definition. And then during the second turning of the wheel, you said, no, nothing exists by definition. What did you mean when you said nothing exists by definition? Well, Lord Buddha says, in the second turning of the wheel, when I said nothing exists by definition, or we could also say nothing exists through having a nature of its own, I was actually referring to three different ways in which things don't have a nature. Some of them exist by definition, and some don't exist by definition. And of course, I wouldn't say anything so radical as to say nothing had any nature of its own from its own side. I would never say that. And that's the third turning of the wheel. That begins the third turning of the wheel. And then Lord Buddha answers the Bodhisattva, and he gives all of these supposed clarifications. Right? The student has asked the question, and the student is not ready to believe that the second turning of the wheel is literal. What did you mean nothing has any self-existence? Sounds like us, right? So then Buddha has to backtrack and redesign things for this particular student. And people like him. And the people like him who think that way will later be called mind-only school people. Or people in 2026 who think like mind-only people, which is basically all of us, right? So we've had this exchange. So let's review the exchange. So we're all on the same page. So the outcome of the exchange, that's what we're talking about. That's what this whole class is about. Between Lord Buddha and the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva says, I learned something. What did he learn? He asked during the first turning of the wheel, during the first turning of the wheel, you said everything exists by definition. And in the second, nothing exists by definition. What did you mean? Right? So, as I just said, Lord Buddha goes through this whole explanation of saying, I wouldn't be so crazy as to say that some things do and some things don't, right? And this process, the outcome of the exchange, right, is called Drupdun. Drupdun means to accomplish the meaning. And just kind of as an aside, back to people in 2026 who think like mind-only school people that I said a few moments ago. If you've ever been to a mixed nuts class, and then if you've ever attended a Lam Rim or a Five Houses class, you might notice that Geshe teaches differently, right? Because it's a different audience. And as we become teachers, we have to do the same thing. Sometimes we have to soften what we're going to say, because otherwise we freak out the people who are there and they run away and they get scared. Right? So we have to be careful, and we have to judge who we're teaching and to give them something that they can eat, right? Something that is going to taste okay, at least, if not delicious. And this is maybe what Lord Buddha is doing. Oh, this student and people like him can't understand that nothing has any self-existence yet. Let's teach something that they can accept. Right? So the outcome of the exchange, the Drupdun, and that's what we're going to go into today. And we've reached this very famous part in the text in the mind-only school that is called that, the outcome of the exchange. Outcome means like the result of a business deal. So think you go to the market and you see something you want to purchase and they give you a price and you're like, oh, that's a little too expensive. And then you give them a price. You know how it goes, especially in places that it's not a department store where you have to accept the price, right? And you come to an agreement. We can call it profit or conclusion. And this is what we could call the view of each turning of the wheel. We come to a conclusion. We come to the outcome. So we're going to talk about defining each turning of the wheel today. And the Bodhisattva says, oh, I get it. The first time you turned the wheel of the Dharma, you didn't mean us to take it literally. And then the second time you turned the wheel of the Dharma, again, you didn't mean what you were saying. And now, in the third turning of the wheel, now you're telling us the real truth. So we're discussing the outcome of the exchange. That's his outcome. That's the Bodhisattva's conclusion, his outcome. And this is what we're discussing. And the outcome is really important in Trang. The Buddha says in the first, first turning and the second turning, he says they were not literal. And he teaches the third turning that nothing exists by definition. So again, with your mind only hat on, by definition means from its own side, with its own unique way of being. And that's how we believe it too, right? Can you have a negative emotion if you don't believe that it's not coming from its own side? Anybody have an answer in the chat? No. If you know that it's coming from you, you can't get upset. You can't. And that's why we study emptiness, because we want to do the opposite. You can't have understanding and negative emotions in your mind at the same time. You can't hold wisdom and misunderstanding in the mind at the same time. So, how do you know when you are misunderstanding? You get upset. Pretty simple. You that's the pen which comes from its own side. And that's what Lord Buddha said in the first turning. Lord Buddha was being figurative. And he's trying to make it easy for people who would freak out if he said, it's all coming from you. In the second turning of the wheel, according to the mind only school, he was just trying to shock people, saying, nothing exists. Take, for example, the Heart Sutra. No eyes, no ears, no nose. Not even things which anyone can see works. Not even those things. And the one we talked about the other day, not even the sun that comes up every morning comes from its own side. Wait a minute, Lord Buddha, you're being too radical. That can't be a mental projection. And we talked about it, 6 billion people at the same time. But it is. And we also talked about that. Thank you to one. So we have to ask this question. What is the first turning? Everything exists by definition. And the second, nothing exists by definition. And the third, well, some things do and some things don't. Kind of sounds like when we get challenged about something, we kind of go, well, maybe maybe it's good and maybe it's not so good. We don't want to really take a stand, right? So there are three different natures, and sometimes two of them exist by definition and one of them doesn't. That's what I really meant, says Lord Buddha. So in the mind-only school, which turning of the wheel is literal? The third. Yep, you guys got it right. Thank you. In the exchange between Lord Buddha and Bodhisattva, we all know that in the mind-only school, the first two turnings of the wheel were spoken figuratively, right? Come on. And the third one was spoken literally. So the third should be taken on face value. So literal and face value, they mean the same thing in this school. In the middle way school, any teaching which primarily addresses emptiness is literal. I need a different hat on. And so let's put that one in. Any teaching which does not teach emptiness is figurative and was taught to bring the disciple closer to the correct view. In middle way, a teaching taught at face value may be taken as the wording says. So according to the middle way school, the second one is face value. And the first and third are something you have to interpret. Did the Buddha mean it when he backtracked in the third turning of the wheel, according to the middle way school? Anybody? Here's me. No, he didn't. He was just trying to take things more easily. He was trying to make it easier for the students, right? Who couldn't handle the ultimate way of understanding things. Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Did he mean it in the first turning of the wheel when he said everything exists truly? Everything exists from its own side, right? It's figurative, the first turning. So yeah, no, he didn't. Not from the middle way point of view. That's the hat we have on now. According to the mind-only school and the middle way school, that first turning of the wheel was not something that we have to take on face value. The big difference comes in this second one, right? When Lord Buddha made that radical statement, nothing has any self-existence from its own side. Nothing exists by definition. Again, between the two schools, the middle way school says take it on face value. We're talking about the second turning of the wheel. And the mind only school says no, it was figurative. He was just being too radical. Your homework question asks, why so in each case? The words figurative and literal in the middle way school have a different meaning in the mind only school. Okay. In the middle way school, when you say the second turning of the wheel was literal, you don't mean it's to be taken on face value. It has a totally different meaning. The very words, literal and figurative, have different connotation. Being literal and to be something you can take on face value in the mind only school do not mean the same thing. So what does it mean in the middle way school when you say that this teaching of Lord Buddha was literal? And this one over here is figurative. Only one thing, and only one. Does that teaching primarily address emptiness? I'll go back. Sorry, that was premature. And does it address it clearly? If a teaching clearly addresses emptiness, then in the highest school of all Buddhism, that's what the Buddha really wanted to talk about. And then we can call it literal. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when Geshe Michael teaches, that's all he wants to teach as well, right? No matter what the subject is, it always comes back to emptiness and seeds. So if you see emptiness directly in this life, you are out of this suffering world. You're on your way out, right? And we have to do it. We have to become what is called a stream enterer. So anytime the Buddha taught emptiness clearly in a teaching, he was talking about what he really wanted to talk about. And anytime he didn't, he was being figurative. Like in the first, in the period of time when he first taught, he taught how an ordained person should put on their robes. He also taught about the different realms of existence. He taught about bodhicitta. They're all aimed at getting you to see emptiness directly. So are they literal? In the middle way school. Anybody have an idea? No, not in the middle way school. Yeah, no. Are they figurative? Yes, because they don't clearly address the question of emptiness. So face value is a different thing in the middle way school. Face value means, can you take it as the wording says? So what about the mind-only school? Right? Is figurative something you must interpret further or something you can take on face value? Are they the same thing? To say this teaching of the Buddha was figurative, meaning you must interpret it further, right? And that you can't take it on face value. And Todd says, yes. And I agree with him. And Lord Buddha agrees with him. And Mind Only School agrees with him. That's what we meant. So again, back to middle way. Does it mean the same thing to be literal and to be something you can take on face value? No. Because literal in the middle way school is a code word for any teaching in which Buddha talked about what he really wanted to talk about, which was what? Emptiness, yes. And so if somebody asks you then from the mind only point of view, is the third turning of the wheel literal? In which Buddha backtracked and said, yeah, half the stuff I said was true, and half the stuff I said wasn't. Is that literal in the mind only school? Oh, we've got two different opinions in the chat. In the mind only school, right? In the third turning of the wheel, when he backtracked, they say, yes, it's totally literal. And you take it on face value as well. Okay. Middle way school. Ready? This is super good for understanding emptiness, right? In the middle way school, is the third turning of the wheel literal? Does it talk about emptiness clearly? No, no. Yay, you guys, no. Right? It doesn't clearly talk about emptiness, right? Or maybe it does. We'll have to talk about it. We have to be careful with that. So in the sutra, where the Bodhisattva says, I got it. The first one was figurative, the second one was figurative, and the last one is literal. Of course, he doesn't quite say it in those words, right? Let's see if we have the words that he really says it in. So there are 4 expressions that describe the first and second turnings of the wheel. The Sutra on the True Intent. I was just looking at the chat, sorry. The Sutra on the True Intent makes 4 statements that characterize the first and second turnings of the wheel. Okay. Don't forget, This is a mind-only sutra, and they are code words. And all of these statements boil down to the fact that the first and second turnings are only meant figuratively and are not the highest truth. The third turning, by contrast, was spoken literally and is the highest truth, according to who? Mind-only school. And they say first, they have something higher. There's some higher truth. The Bodhisattva doesn't say, oh, I get it. These are figurative and these are literal. He says, oh, I get it. There is something higher than the first and second turning, meaning they are not literal. When you say this is not the highest interpretation, the implication is that it is something I have to take figuratively. Meaning that the third turning of the wheel is higher than the first two. And when you get to your reading, you're going to see that there's a huge debate about this. But what does the Bodhisattva say about number 3, the third turning of the wheel? It says there is nothing higher. That is the ultimate explanation. Let me ask you a question. Who would use this sutra to prove their school? Mind only. Thank you, Min. They're going to search through thousands of sutras and come up with one that supports their point of view. So the Bodhisattva says there is nothing higher. And then number 2, they leave an opening. What does that mean? It means they leave an opening for, let's say, debate or dispute. Yes, Todd, dispute or debate, exactly. Because in the third turning of the wheel, the Buddha spoke what he really wanted to say, which is that half of what I said was true and half of what I said wasn't. Half the things in the world don't exist by definition, but half of them do. So they leave this opening. For some, for two people to dispute it, right? So each of them is like, well, what does it mean? What does this stuff really mean? What did the Buddha say when he said everything? Or what did he mean when he said everything did exist from its own side? What did he mean when he said they didn't exist from his own side? They leave this opening for debate. And then, of course, there is a big debate that goes on for 2,000 years about the word open, what the word opening means here. Generally, we can say opening for discussion. The third expression is they have to be interpreted further. They are not meant to be taken literally. They are figurative. Nothing exists by definition in and of itself, means different things in different schools. Therefore, you can't just leave it at that. At what? Nothing exists by definition. You need to discuss it further and interpret it. So it has to be interpreted further. In mind only, figurative and being interpreted mean the same thing. And then number 4, they serve as a basis of contention. Contention means to have a fight, an argument, right? Kind of like it leaves an opening and therefore it serves as a basis of contention. Somebody's going to fight about it. There are Indian commentaries. There are Chinese commentaries. There is Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary. And guess what? They don't all understand it the same way. So these different turnings of the wheel and how they're understood serve as a basis to fight over their meaning. And so these are the 4 ways that Lord Buddha expresses himself during the Drupten. Do you remember what the Drupten is? It is the outcome. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's the outcome. When the Bodhisattva says, I've got it, he doesn't say, you meant that figuratively or you meant that literally. He goes through each of these 4 for each turning of the wheel. So when he talks about the first turning of the wheel, he says, it has something higher. It has to be interpreted further. This is going to cause a fight, right? And then when he gets to the second turning of the wheel, he says exactly the same thing. But when he gets to the third turning of the wheel, what does he say? He says that third turning of the wheel has nothing higher. It does not leave an opening for any further questions. I don't have to interpret it further. And we can take it literally. It doesn't have to serve as a basis for argument. Nobody in their right mind could ever argue about it. But when he gets to the third turning of the wheel, what does he say? He puts a knot on each of these. The third turning wheel has nothing higher, right? And so forth, as we just talked about. So we would say then that third, or mind-only school would say that third turning is literal. And I want to bring to your attention, because you might get confused, on your homework, this is question 4, and it says name the 5 expressions, but that's a typo. There are only 4 expressions. So I don't want you to freak out, wondering if it's literal or figurative. Question 4, when it asks you for the 5, it should say 4, okay? So, the wheel of Dharma, the Chunkor, right? At the very beginning, in the monastery, at the very beginning of a student's studies, they studied this subject for a few years. The wheel of Dharma, Chunkor. It's not mind only, it's studied in the lower Madhyamika, Madhyamika Svatantrika. And we're just going to have a little taste of it. We should know about the 3 turnings of the wheel, right? Because they eventually evolved into the difference between Hinayana and Mahayana and everything else. Hinayana schools say Buddha never taught the 2nd and 3rd turning of the wheel. So we're going to go through who believes the 1st turning and who doesn't. What did they teach during the 1st turning? Who was it taught for? Stuff like that. So you end up with this like Excel sheet or a chart of all the details of the 3 turnings of the wheel. We're going to identify its name, time period, place, who it was for, the main subject matter, and the viewpoint expressed. For each turning of the wheel, generally speaking, there was a huge gathering taught to a particular audience in a particular place with a particular viewpoint expressed. Doesn't mean that everything Lord Buddha said at that place to those people is part of the 1st turning of the wheel. No. Because, he might have said, let's take a break right now. Go and use the bathrooms or something like that. So not everything is part of the 1st turning of the wheel. We can also ask the same question. Does it mean that something he said 50 years later couldn't be included in the 1st turning of the wheel? If he taught the 4 Arya truths 50 years later and said they exist by definition, would they be included in the 1st turning of the wheel? Yeah, they would. Because we're talking about subject matter, not time. So the 1st turning of the wheel, it's all laid out here for you. The name in Tibetan is Denshi Chunkor, which means the turnings of the wheel of the 4 truths. The period it was taught was primarily during the early part of Lord Buddha's life on this planet. It was taught in Varanasi. And basically the general area in Bengal, India, where the town of Sarnath or Deer Park is located. This is Varanasi. Let's see. This is Varanasi here, and this is Sarnath here, where the Buddha first taught in Deer Park. Very holy place. Who did he teach it to? We say the Nyentu Tekpa, those of the lower way. Students of the Hinayana school. And this refers to the listener's vehicle, the people who think with the philosophical viewpoint that things are self-existent. This viewpoint corresponds to the two lower schools of ancient India, Abhidharma and Sutrists. The basic subject matter, as I said, is the four Arya or realized truths. Pakpa Dempa Shi. Pakpe is Arya. Shi is fourth, right? Dempa, truth. So Lord Buddha taught the four Arya truths originally to his first 5 disciples, who was the mother tiger and her 4 cubs, right? And the viewpoint is everything exists by definition. Chunam Rangit Seniki Drupa. Everything has a nature of existing by definition. Everything has its own identity from its own side. The second turning of the wheel. The turning of the wheel, how nothing exists by definition. Tseni Mepe Chunkor. The time that he taught this in, he taught it primarily in the middle part of his teachings on this planet. And he taught it in a place called Rajgirha, which means Vulture's Peak. Like the Heart Sutra starts out on Vulture's Peak in the Keep of the King, right? And then he taught the Heart Sutra. Who were the disciples? Who were the students? Those of the greater way. Tekchen. Mind only also says mind only and is in there because they know it is figurative. In the second turning of the wheel, what does Lord Buddha say? He says nothing exists by definition. So the subject matter is emptiness. Tompani. And emptiness is the fact that nothing has a nature from its own side. And so the viewpoint then is no existing thing exists by definition. Chuna Mrangit Seneki Madrupa. And then the third turning of the wheel is the turning of the wheel of or on fine distinctions. Lekshe Junkor. Lord Buddha taught it in the latter part of his time here on this planet. And it was taught in a place called Vaishali, or Yangpachen, which means the big gathering. And these are the ruins of Vaishali. The students were those of all ways. Okay? Hinayana and Mahayana. The subject matter was the three attributes. Remember them? Kuntak, Shenwangs, and Yongdrups? Right? Those three attributes. And the view was, some things exist by definition and some things don't. And we must make fine distinctions between them. So what does turning the wheel of Dharma mean? This idea of wheel turning comes from the Abhidharma school and from the perfection of wisdom, and it is accepted by all the schools. A Chakravartin, which you see here, a wheel emperor, he who rules the wheel, is an emperor who gets his or her power from the wheel. And they say that, these rulers can control the entire universe through their gold or silver wheel. The ones with the gold control the entire universe, the silver ones only parts of the universe, and they are close to enlightenment and have some, but not all of the marks of a Buddha. The most powerful Chakravartins are begged by the people to be the ruler. The less powerful ones have to fight to maintain their power. So this precious wheel is a spaceship or a flying saucer with a diameter of, let's say 1,500 kilometers. And it can travel 500,000 kilometers a day, right? Its function is to carry the emperor and his four forces all over the empire in order to conquer unconquered spiritual territory. Which I think is really important to think about. Can you turn the wheel of Dharma to conquer your unconquered spiritual territory? So if you have one of these wheels, meaning one of these flying saucers, called what? The Dharma. You can take over all the spiritual territory that you don't have yet, especially the path of seeing. So in the Abhidharma system, it always refers to the path of seeing. Seeing what? Emptiness directly. So this wheel is the Dharma. And we're being invited to be the emperor and ride on this wheel and conquer our unconquered spiritual territory. This Dharma wheel enables you to achieve spiritual realizations and goals, especially the path of seeing. So after you see emptiness directly, you can understand the entire contents of all Buddhist scriptures immediately. It is also said that the 8 spokes represent the eightfold path of an Arya. The 2 deer represent Deer Park, where Lord Buddha taught the first turning of the wheel. And this turning of the wheel of Dharma can occur at 2 different levels. The Dharma wheel, meaning super fast spaceship, means that in 10 hours and 20 minutes, you can just about cover every Dharma teaching ever taught on this planet. The day after you've seen emptiness directly, you understand the content of the entire scriptures, 200,000 books in about 10 hours. You'll never find a thing again that you really don't understand. So yeah, that's a lot of territory to cover in one day after millions of lifetimes. That's the main wheel of the Dharma. The main wheel of the Dharma is this event of seeing emptiness directly. So that's one kind. There is also the wheel of Dharma, which is the teachings, meaning the physical Dharma, the Lungi Chunkor. Say Lungi Chunkor. Lungi Chunkor. Lung means speech. And ultimately, it's related to another word which is spelled differently but sounds similar, which means air or wind. Because what comes out of our mouth, driven by the wind, right, is physical Dharma. Whether it's verbal, audible, or visible. Or sometimes the Buddha can also teach with gestures, motions, right? Enlightened beings can teach with all of their senses. Well, that's another point. Let's not go into that, right? So all of that is packaged up into Lungi Chunkor. Chunkor means chu, means Dharma, and kor or korlo means wheel. Lung and sem, mind, right? The wheel of Dharma, which is the real, which are the physical Dharma, like our books, and then the realizations. The Dharma, the wheel of Dharma, that is the realizations, Tokpe Chunkor. And these are spiritual realizations we have from learning, listening, contemplating the Dharma. Like Tonglam, the direct, the moment of the direct perception of emptiness or moments. The spiritual realizations are triggered by the speech of a teacher that catches like a gear in the student's heart. The words come in, they catch in the heart, and they turn. Right? It's really a beautiful analogy. And then the student is able to go and speak the Dharma to a new student, who in turn reaches realization, and the gears move on from one student to the next. So this is the way it's been handed down to us from Lord Buddha for over 2,500 years. This perpetuating process of teachers speaking and offering spiritual realizations to students, who they themselves then become teachers and teach it to their students. So it's really cool. The teacher turns the physical verbal wheel of the Dharma. And then inside the student's heart, these realizations get triggered. Those of you who have studied the Diamond Cutter Sutra, right? We had this when we discussed how long will the Dharma stay in the world. So which one do you think lasts longer in the world? The Dharma in the form of physical form, the Lungi Chunkor, or the Tokpe Chunkor, the mental realizations in the hearts of people? Which dies first? The ideas die out first. The realizations will die out first. Dharma in the form of spiritual realizations will die out first, while there are still books in the libraries, on computers, which no one understands. And this is the last page of the Abhidharma Kosha, and it's very depressing. Lord Buddha says, by the way, Dharma is going to die out on this planet, and this is how it's going to happen. How many years does it take? 5,000. The sutra says that 2,500 years after Lord Buddha lived, the Dharma will spread to the West, which is what we've seen, right? To the land of the ruddy-faced people. So we're exactly at the point predicted in the sutras when Buddhism spread to the West. So what have we been talking about when we talked about the Buddha turning the wheel of the Dharma? Have we been talking about Lungi Chunkar or Tokpe Chunkar? We can say mostly Lungi Chunkar, mostly verbal. We're not really talking about the realizations in people's hearts. And generally, I mean, Lord Buddha, of course, teaches from his realizations. Right? Generally, we don't talk about our realizations because then they kind of become normal. We act our lives upon our understandings and realizations, the Tokpe Chunkar. And guess what? That's the end of the class. I don't even know what time it is. Oh, not too bad. A little over, not even an hour and a half. My goodness. So your meditation assignment, 15 minutes a day, analytical meditation in which you alternate going through the 3 turnings of the wheel as a mind-only thinker. And then, so you put on your mind-only hat, and then you put on your middle way hat, and you evaluate each wheel to see if it should be taken on face value or not. So you're going to have to review to remember what face value means. So again, I invite you to do that with your friends online, in the coffee shop, wherever it happens to be. Do this together. It helps you and it helps the other person, right? It helps you both to plant seeds. Or if you have a group, all of you to plant seeds. So I want to encourage you to do that. And with that, let's offer that perfect world again for these perfect teachings. Okay. Imagine that world. These are not just words, they're not just Lungi Chunkor. Imagine it in your mind, in your heart, what that perfect world is going to be like, who's going to be in it, who you will be, and offer it to every being in the world. Sashi Puki Jukshin Metok Tram Rira Blingshin Yende Genbadi Sange Shingdu Mikte Wargi Jokun Namdak Shingla Chupar Shok Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami Kewadi Kewokun Sunam Yeshe Sok Sok Shing Sunam Yeshe Lejungwe Dampa Kuni Topar Sho. So dedicating, giving away everything that we have done here so that we can become enlightened beings. And so every being can become an enlightened being and be free of suffering. Cool. We do have a few minutes if anybody has anything they want to share or ask questions about. My computer's asking, I'm singing, so do I want to set up professional audio? I don't think so. These computers are getting more and more crazy. And let me put you in gallery view so I can see everybody. Yeah. No questions or comments? Alrighty then, I will see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend. And then I hope to see some of you at Diamond Mountain next week as well. And thank you for studying this stuff and cooking it and thinking about it and spreading it in the world to make this world a better place. Yeah, thanks. And thank you to all the interpreters and the recorders and the tech and everybody who helps make this possible for us to have this world family. Oh, we had a raised hand and then it disappeared. Okie dokie. Ciao.